everyone, and welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's embroideries tutorial, we are going to be unboxing the June perfectly pieced box from Me Time Delivered. However, we're not going to be showing the embroidery of these blocks. Instead, we're going to whip out the sewing machine and we're gonna sew up an adorable bag. So I'm going to unbox this very quickly and then I'm going to embroider the blocks off camera and then I'm gonna show you how to make this adorable little drawstring backpack. And this is using the material from the June perfectly pieced box, and it's using some of the accessories from there, like these awesome drawstring cords. Now, a drawstring backpack is a fantastic beginning bag project. It is simple, there's no hardware, everything is fabric. I mean, you could even make this out of fabric. The pattern for this month does have the drawstrings as fabric, but since we have the box and we have this easy cording, we're going to use that instead. But you can see on this bag here, you have the beautiful quilt blocks right here. So there are actually like two different quilt blocks, one without the little circle and one with it. And then we have a top cinch, and then we have a bottom panel, and then a base. This is a great bag to practice on if you're brand new to bag making. We can open up the top here. And then we just have a nice basic lining, nothing fancy, no pockets, nothing like that. So drawstring bags are so much fun to make. They're very quick, and you have this beautiful detail because you have the quilting and the quilt blocks and everything like that. But you can still take this pattern and just make one of these without the quilt blocks. So once you make it with the kit, if you're like, you know what, I want to do it again, but I have some cool fabric I want to use here instead, just do that. So I will tell you that the block size for this backpack, these are 6-inch blocks. So I did have to enlist the help of a different embroidery machine. You guys know I usually use my Brother PE800. However, that cannot make the 6-inch block sizes. So for this project, you will have to be able to make the 6-inch blocks. And then all you have to do is whip it up, put it together, and you have this adorable little bag. So thank you as always to Me Time Delivered for sponsoring today's video. This has been a really fun one. It's always fun when I can incorporate a bag with quilting and embroidery. Like I said, we're not going to go through the embroidery process today. It is a very simple, basic embroidery block. I think you'll be good, but we are going to go in detail, walk through how to make this drawstring bag using those embroidery blocks. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comments section. There are other projects, so if you're signed up for the Perfectly Pieced box, whether you get the physical box or just the digital files, remember, for Perfectly Pieced, there are two options. You can just do the digital files, which gives you all the files for the quilt blocks, but it also gives you the patterns. In each quilt block size, there's 2-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, and 8-inch. Each one of those usually has its own specific project that goes with it, so you can still get the pattern for this and everything like that if you're like, I don't need more material, I don't need more thread. However, you can also opt for the fun little box that'll arrive on your doorstep every month, and this has fabric, all kinds of goodies in it. Anything you're gonna need for the quilt blocks, and then extras. Like today, the extras are these awesome little drawstring cords. All right, guys, let's get started. So let's open up the goodie box for this month. This is for June. Ooh, I love these colors. Oh, blues and yellows, I love that. So let's see. First, we have our pack of material. Let's look at these prints. Oh, I love this blue floral. Oh, I love this one too. These are so pretty. A nice solid. Lots of different colors this month. So cute. And so like I said, I am going to be using these as intended for the drawstring bag. So what else do we have in here? Oh, it looks like this might be like a cording. So this is going to be the strap for the drawstring bag. And then we also have some beautiful like navy, what color is it? Cobalt embroidery thread. And then here we have our block design. We're going to be making this block for the drawstring bag. We're actually making a few like this, a few a little bit different. So I'm going to go cut all this up and I'm going to make the blocks off camera, and then I'll come back here and we'll build the bag together. All right, so I've already done all of the embroidery steps. So these are the embroidery steps. I'm going to have 2 block A's, and block A's just look like this. It's just 3 rectangles and then this little circle up here. So I have 2 of those, 2 block B's, which are just the same except without the circle, 2 block C's, which just change the bottom rectangle here, but also have that circle up there, the semicircle, and then 2 block D's. So those are ready to go. Next, I have my 4 bag bottom cuts. These are quilted. I guess you could skip it, but the quilting is pretty much the only thing offering any support to this, so I wouldn't skip that. Then I have 2 cuts here are my cinch bands. On one of the cinch bands, we have these little buttonhole cuts on the very end. It's a little messy, but that's okay. I don't have any interfacing on this, which Personally, I probably would put interfacing on this normally, but I'm just gonna go with the pattern. I'm not gonna use any interfacing. And then I have 4 cuts here, which are my straps. We're gonna build those in just a moment. And then I have 2 large cuts underneath here, and this is for the lining of the bag. And then in the kit, they have this cording here, which is what I'm gonna use for the drawstring. So I have not tried this pattern before. We're just gonna hope it works out. Okay, and then just a few little extra things. The needle I'm going to be using today is a Microtex 8012. You could also use a 7010 because this is quilt cotton. We don't have a lot of thickness to this. You don't want a needle that's very big and it's just going to push the fabric down and then get it jammed. So you want a smaller needle that's going to pierce the fabric. And then my thread today, I'm going to use a Tex 35 weight. This is Color Celebration. It comes from Wizardry Stitchery. In the bobbin, I have a Gutermann thread, healthy supply of clips to hold everything together, a 1" by 6" ruler as always, and then I have my stiletto, and I have a marking tool, which is just an air erasing marking tool. All right, so we're gonna start with the straps. We have 4 cuts here. We're gonna sew them all together. So what you're gonna do is take 1 strap and lay it right side up. If you're using the dark blue like I am, it doesn't really matter which side. And then you're gonna take another strap and you're gonna lay it right side down. And you're going to lay them perpendicular to each other just like this. Now they can't overhang. They don't have to meet right here. I have selvage on the corners here, and instead of trimming it off, I'm gonna kind of do the lazy route where I just make sure the selvage overhangs on the top and the side. And since this is so dark, I'll use a chalk pen to mark this. But what I wanna do now is I wanna mark this corner on the top left and draw a line to the bottom right corner. Once I have that marked line, I'm gonna grab some clips so it doesn't move around on me. And now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna stitch right over this marked line. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, once you have these sewn together, we're gonna trim off these little hangovers over here by about 1/4 inch. Just trim those off like that. You can also trim them along the top and bottom so that it's nice and straight. All right, now, taking the top piece of fabric, flip it so it's right side up. And now it is important to know which side you're gonna call the right side because we have to sew these all on properly or else you're gonna have seams on one side and seams on the other side, which is no good. So take the top piece and flip it so that it is right side up and then work your way down to the end here. Grab your 3rd strip of fabric and lay it right side down, just like we did the first 2 strips. Draw your diagonal line, clip together, and let's once again go sew over this diagonal line. Once those are sewn, just trim down that seam just like you did before to 1/4 inch. I just eyeball it. And then finally, take your strip and make sure it is right side up, meaning the seam is on the back, and just keep pulling it. Don't let it twist on you. Make sure it stays right side up. There we go. So that's right side up. Take the remaining strap piece and lay it right side down. And then just repeat by drawing the line corner to corner and then sewing right over that marked line. And finally, trim down that seam. So now grab your iron. And let's deal with these seams first. I'm gonna go to each seam and then just use my fingers to press the seam open and then press it with an iron. And if you need to trim down any of these little corners, you can go ahead and do that. So just do this for all the seams. And now's a good time to check that all of the seams are on the same side. You don't want, you know, the seam to be on the top over here and then the seam to be on the bottom over here. All the seams need to be on the same side of the fabric. Now lay your strap wrong side up. And we're gonna fold this in half, wrong sides together, long sides together, and we're gonna press this with our iron. We're gonna get a very skinny strap with this. So do this the entire length. You know what, I just realized that we're using the cording instead of this for the drawstring. So I'm gonna show you how to build these, but we're gonna be using the drawstring. So once you have this entirely folded in half, wrong sides together like that, open it up, and then you're gonna fold down the long edges, again wrong sides together, but this time down to that middle mark that you made just previously. And you're gonna go along the entire length of the strap doing this. And then once you have one side pressed, take the opposite edge and press it up to meet so that both of the long raw edges are meeting on the center on the back side of your strap. And then once you have that done, you're gonna fold the strap again in half. So you have a very skinny little strap like this, which will work as your drawstring. So I'm only gonna cut off about 6 inches of this because that's what I'm gonna need to use since I'm using the cording for the drawstring part. But I will need to use a couple smaller cuts of this to attach the drawstring strap on the bottom of the bag. So I just cut down this little skinny strip down to about 6 inches long. And now I'm going to top stitch on both folded long edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you're using this material for the entire drawstring strap, you're going to want to do this for the whole drawstring strap. All right, since I have this little cut here, I'm going to cut 2 strips from this that are each 2.5 inches long. All right, so these will be used later on in the pattern. And now I'm going to grab the cording that was provided in the box, and I'm going to fold this in half and get all the knots out of it. So all I'm doing now is just pulling this in half to find the midpoint, and then I'm gonna cut at that midpoint. There we go. And then now I'll have these 2 straps that I'll use later in the bag to create the backpack. So now we're going to build the front panel. So the front panel is going to have the cinch band on the top, 4 of your blocks, A, B, C, and D. You can arrange these however you want, but I'm going to stick with the pattern that's provided. And then 2 of your little bag bottoms down here on the bottom. Okay, so to get started, let's just get these blocks together. So I'm going to take these 2 top blocks and I'm going to fold them right sides together, making sure I remember they're being sewn along this side right here. And I'm going to clip them right sides together. It's always helpful to look at the side here and match up the seams right in the center so that you know it'll all line up correctly. There we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing with these 2 blocks on the bottom, folding them right sides together, matching up the seams in the center first, and then clipping there, and then clipping out to the sides. There we go. And then I'm doing the same thing with the 2 bottom blocks, just they're gonna lay out like this, and I'm gonna fold them right sides together, and then clip along their shorter matching edges. And now I'm gonna take each one of these sets to the sewing machine, and I'm gonna sew along each clipped edge at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance if you can do it, which is just a little bit less than a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and backstitch at the beginning and the end of each seam. All right, so once you have these sewn, relay out your blocks. You have cinch band on top, your quilt blocks in the center, your base on the bottom. And let's sew together the quilt blocks now. So lay them out how you want them in the end, and then flip them right sides together. Try to take these middle seams here and fold them in opposite directions and line up that seam. And then clip in the middle first, and then add some clips working your way out to the corners. And then sew along this clipped edge here at a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. We have our center, our top, and our bottom. So now we just have to attach those to the center. So make sure on the top here, the little buttonholes are all the way on the top corners. Fold this cinch band right side down so that it lines up with the top of the middle, and just use some clips to hold in place. And then looking at the bottom, flip your bottom pieces up, right sides to the bottom of that center there. And for this one, you can match up the midpoints, just like you did with the quilt blocks in the center of the bag. Add a clip there, and then clip all the way out to the edge. And now let's sew along the top and bottom edges at a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, and there's our front panel. You can go ahead and grab an iron and press this so that it's nice and flat. And I always like to press it from the front. All right, so now take your remaining cinch band, your remaining 4 quilt blocks, and the 2 bottom pieces here, and let's just repeat that. This will be the back panel, so the front panel is done. That's pulled out. Front panel is done. Just repeat the exact same process for the back panel. All right, so now take the front piece and grab your 2 little like strap tabs and fold them in half so that they're right sides out. And you're going to measure up a 1/2 inch between the seam on the base and the bottom of the quilt blocks. And you're just going to attach the raw edge of your little strap connector over here, just like that. So the folded edge goes in towards the center. The raw edge is 1/2 inch up from the seam. Do the same thing on the left side. And now let's go sew these down at about 1/8 inch seam allowance. If you haven't already, grab a seam ripper and just rip the inside of these buttonholes up here. And that's going to be the hole for our drawstring. There we go. Now take your front panel and your back panel, and we're going to lay these panels right sides together. Make sure that the cinches are on the top and the bases are on the bottom. They're just perfectly lined up. Now I'm going to turn to the side, and I am going to match up all the seams as best I can. I'm going to start with the base and then go to the center here. Any seam that you can, if you can flip the seams in opposite directions, that's going to be really helpful. Up here at the top where the cinch panel is, you don't have to worry about it since there's no interfacing there. All right, so now we're going to sew along the sides and the bottom at a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the top over here, but we're leaving the top open. right, here we go. We've got our panels sewn together. The top is still open. Now we're going to box the bottom. So what you want to do is fold this so that the side seam is up just like this, and I'm pushing my finger into this corner here, and we're going to flatten this out like a triangle. Now, first things first, you want to make sure the bottom seam and the side seam are lined up. And I know that's hard to do because you can't see it, but you need to try to use your fingers on the inside here to feel for it and make sure that those seams are lined up right on top of each other. I'm going to grab some clips and I'm going to clip further down here. There we go. So there's one corner. I'm going to do the same thing on the other corner. Okay, and now what you want to do is just sew over the seam. So look for the stitching. I know it can get a little complicated because it's like we have raw edges here, we have a lot of stitching from the quilting and everything, but try to find the stitching that connects the base to the quilt blocks. We're going to sew right over that stitching on each one of these corners, and that's going to give us the boxed bottom. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so your exterior is sewn together. Put that to the side. Now grab your two lining panels, and we're pretty much going to do the same thing. So just take your two lining panels and lay them right sides together, lining up all the edges. And then let's clip along the sides and the bottom. Okay, once you have the sides and the bottom clipped, grab your ruler and a marking tool, and let's leave like a 4-inch opening on the bottom edge here. So it's centered on the bottom clipped edge. Just mark a 4-inch opening. And now we're going to sew along the sides and the bottom at a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch at the tops where you start and stop. Also make sure you backstitch at these opening marks. Leave this opening here unsewn. Okay, we're going to box these just like we did before. So put your hand through the top and push the corners so that the side seam is up. And then just make sure the bottom seam and the side seam are coming together. You might be able to kind of see through your material. So just get it as straight as possible. Add some clips to help hold everything in place. You can iron this if you'd like. Now what you're going to do is you're going to measure 2 inches down from the tip of the triangle and draw a horizontal line. So you should have something like this. It's 2 inches down from the tip and it's about 4 inches across. Repeat that with the other corner. All right, now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and just like before, we're going to stitch right on top of those marked lines. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. So once you have these corners boxed, it doesn't say to trim them, so I'm just going to leave them. We're going to flip the lining so it's right side out, and then grab your exterior that's still wrong side out, and you're going to insert your lining right side out into it so that the exterior and the lining are right sides together. Just insert the lining inside, and then we're going to clip the top edge here. So first match up those side seams and clip the side seams together first, and then you can go around the entire top edge here, just lining up the raw edges and adding clips or pins, whichever you're comfortable with, to just hold it all together. Now we're going to sew around the entire top clipped edge at a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Alrighty, the exterior and the lining are now sewn together, so pull the lining out, open the hole in the bottom of the lining, and then let's pull the whole bag through that hole in the bottom of the lining so that everything is right side out. Once you have it all turned out, just reach in, make sure you poke out the corners, and then push in the lining. This is a little tricky because that top casing wants to come down. So if you need to, you might want to grab your iron and just press along this top casing. I think I will actually. So I'm just lining up this top seam between the lining and the casing and just giving it a good press, because I need this casing to be as flat as possible before we do the next step. Okay, now the pattern says we want to sew a casing for this a 1/4 inch below the bottom of the buttonholes. So let's see how far away that is from the seam. So 1/4 inch below the bottom of the buttonholes is about 1 1/4 inch from the top edge over here. So you're going to want to mark something on your machine so that you know that, because we want to go around the entire top edge doing that. Now, you could grab a ruler and a marking tool and just draw a line that is 1 1/4 inch below the seam all the way around and then just sew over that, or just find a spot on your sewing machine, use your ruler to figure out where that is. And we're gonna go around the entire top edge here, sewing 1 1/4 inch below the seam that's between the casing and the lining, and it should also be 1/4 inch below the bottom of your buttonholes. Okay, before we attach the drawstring, let's just close the opening in the lining real quick. So pull out your lining and stick your fingers into the opening and just make sure you're rolling the raw edges down into the center of the bag. Just roll them down. If you want to iron this, you can do that. I roll it down a generous amount. It's okay if it's not a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's fine. The goal with this is just to make sure those raw edges aren't peeking through and, you know, eventually wearing down and causing a hole in the bag. There we go. So now I'm just going to quickly run this to the sewing machine and just top stitch right over this little opening at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, let's finish up this bag. So grab one of your drawstrings, whatever you're using, whether it's fabric or this cording, and you're going to want to grab a safety pin. It's going to be hard to do with this cording, but you're going to insert the safety pin into your material. It's going to be hard to do with this cording here, but I'm going to try my best to kind of wrap it around the safety pin, get it on there. And then let's start with the right side hole over here. You're going to insert your safety pin in there with the drawstring, and then using your fingers in that safety pin, work on moving the safety pin all the way across the front panel here. And then we'll get to the other buttonhole over here and just go past it. You're not going to pull anything out of this one. You're just going to go past the buttonhole, flip this over, and continue working this drawstring through the back of the bag. And then once you get back to the buttonhole that you entered through, you're going to pull your safety pin through there and then gently pull the end of that drawstring out through that hole. So the drawstring, one drawstring, let's get the other one out of the way. One drawstring goes in and out the same spot. So once I get that out of there, I'm going to just pull this off the safety pin, and then I'm going to quickly tie this in a nice little knot before it frays too much. There we go. Now we have these nice little knots here. And I'm going to pull this out and try to straighten out the top cinch part here. So you should have something like this now where the drawstrings are coming out one side. They both went in and out the same side. Now we're going to repeat that on the other side. We're going to go to this buttonhole and we're going to insert it on the left side going towards the right. So depending on how thick your drawstring is, this can be easy or this can be challenging. But I'm just going to do the exact same thing, working my safety pin around the entire front side of the bag and then working it through the entire back side of the bag. Okay, and just like before, this drawstring exit and enters at the same buttonhole. So once you've got it out, I'm going to just tie another knot here so this doesn't completely unravel on me. All right, now let's try to straighten out these drawstrings. So you should have something like this now where you have drawstrings coming out. When you pull them, it cinches really nicely. And now we're going to just tie them to the bottom here. So we're just going to take one of these ends over here, insert it into the loop on the bottom, and then take the other drawstring that's on the same side, and we're going to just tie these together. However you like to tie them together. You can untie the little knots and then retie them as one knot. You can tie them both at the same time, like I'm trying to do, but failing at. I'm just going to tie one big knot just like that, and do the same thing on the other side. And there we go. A little drawstring backpack. Really cute. Actually, I think it's actually a good thing you don't put the interfacing on the top cinch bag because that does allow it to just cinch really nicely because it's a nice big bag, and then when you close it, it has a nice close, but then you have a lot of nice structure on the rest of the bag because of the stabilizer. That's very cute. I hope you guys love making this. This is a cute one. Alrighty guys, what do you think? It's pretty simple, right? And it's a big size. I mean, could you do this with a smaller block? Yes, but you're gonna have to finagle your measurements because if you use the smaller blocks for the quilt blocks right here, you're gonna have to change some of the sizes on the bottom, the top, essentially. Like, you're gonna have to really be able to do some math and change the measurements, but if you're comfortable doing that, go for it. You can definitely use the 4-inch blocks for this and just make a smaller version of the bag. I think that would be really cute. But personally, I love the size of this. This is a very cute little size. You know what this is great for? This is great for like kids when they're going to grandma and grandpa's over the summer, if they're going to a slumber party where they don't need a whole bunch of stuff, they just need like some pajamas, maybe a stuffy, their toothbrush, just little things. Because it's soft, it's cuddly, you can stuff it with things. Oh, you could stuff it with their blankies and their stuffies if they're going on a plane ride, and they can also use this as a pillow or a car ride. I mean, this is cute because it is soft, it's squishy, you know. I really love this bag. This is a really, really cute bag. I hope you guys love it too. If you give it a try, let me know. I want to see your version, especially once you start getting creative. So thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope you had fun. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.